Peace, friends of refined investing. Today we've got a topic that, in my opinion, is extremely important. It's not just about XLM, but a fundamental topic that can end up costing investors a lot of money at some point. Because, we see it time and again. When a coin starts to rise, you always hear the same statements over and over. In today's case, it's things like XLM soon at $10, XLM soon at $100, 100 times guaranteed. This time everything will be different. And honestly, that's exactly the point where a lot of people end up losing their money again. Not because they bought the wrong coin or the wrong project or something, but because they simply developed completely unrealistic expectations. That's why today we're definitely going to take a look at Stellar, or rather XLM, which all of you will know. But we're not going to approach this emotionally, not with a ton of hopium, not with any fantasy price targets, but with mathematics. And what's interesting is that in the end, we can also learn quite a bit for our big brother XRP. So definitely stay tuned. It's going to be exciting, and I'd say let's go. Before we get started, of course, make sure to give a thumbs up. That's a free way to show support. For everyone new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the Crypto Campus. The link is down in the video description. You can also activate night mode if that's a bit easier on your eyes. Of course, we've also included XLM. You'll always see the all-time high and the difference from it at the top. I always thought that was really important. And yeah, you can just check it out. We've also got trading view and so on included. Sometimes it takes a bit to load, but as you can see, everything does load. So in terms of the layout, in my opinion, we're constantly working to optimize it further. That's why I'd be happy if you took a look. Most of it is free for now, all these standard features. For everyone else who wants a portfolio analysis or a detailed portfolio analysis or just a basic understanding of crypto, there are of course a few other products available as well. So I'd be glad if you checked it out. You'll find the links in the video description. But now, let's really get started. But first of all, I don't think Stellar is a bad project or anything like that. Anyone who's been following the channel for a while knows that. Quite the opposite, actually. Stellar has been around for over 10 years in the crypto market, has extremely good partnerships, real use cases above all, an incredibly strong community, and as a result, of course, has built up a certain level of attention over the years. The problem lies somewhere completely different, A lot of investors just look at the price here, but the price alone simply doesn't say much. The crucial question is rather how much money is actually invested in the project, and that's exactly where the story begins. For example, many investors see two coins. Coin A, for instance, costs 20 cents, while coin B costs $20. And automatically, many people then think coin A is cheaper, coin A has more potential, coin A can rise more easily. But of course, that's complete nonsense, and anyone who's been around for a while knows that. Because at the end of the day, it's not the price that matters, but usually the market capitalization in 99% of cases. In other words, price times circulating supply. And that's exactly why today we're going to take a closer look at Stellar, and later on we'll also discuss various price predictions that could be possible. In 2018, Stellar reached an all-time high of about 93 or 94 cents. At that time, there were about 19 billion coins in circulation. Then in 2021, the next big bull run happened. As you might expect naturally, a significant amount of additional capital flowed into the market, and the market capitalization was even higher than in 2018. Still, with Stellar, we only reached the 80-cent mark, right? And now, of course, the big question is, how can more money flow into a coin and yet the price can still be lower, right? The answer is pretty simple. There are just more coins. Let's do a simple example. I don't know, let's imagine you have a pizza in front of you, 8 slices. That means everyone gets a relatively big piece, of course. Now you cut the same pizza into 16 slices. That means the pizza hasn't gotten any bigger, but each individual slice is simply smaller. And that's exactly what happens with many cryptocurrencies. The project grows, the demand grows too, but at the same time, the number of coins on the market also increases. And that's exactly how the price gets diluted, and this is simply called token dilution. But let's take a look at the numbers. In 2018, as I said, the price was about 93 cents. Back then, the circulating supply was around 19 billion coins. In 2021, by comparison, the price was about 80 cents, and we had a circulating supply of around 23 billion coins. In 2024, it was about 64 cents. The circulating supply had already reached 30 billion coins. And today, we have a price of about 23 cents and a circulating supply of roughly 33.7 billion coins. And now, you can suddenly understand why the price hasn't just exploded. Not because Stellar is fundamentally a bad project, but simply because the number of coins has increased massively. Now we're getting to the most exciting part of the video. A lot of people are expecting new all-time highs for all the altcoins and so on in the next bull run. And I mean, sure, in principle, that's certainly possible, but now let's just calculate in an extremely conservative way. I mean, if Stellar were to reach a market capitalization of $25 billion in the next cycle, for example, then the price would mathematically only be around 67 cents. And that's exactly the point, because many investors completely underestimate this. The project can get stronger, there is no question about it, without a doubt. Of course, it can also gain more users, get more attention, attract a significant amount of more money, and so on, and still simply not reach a new all-time high, simply because the circulating supply keeps increasing, which makes it considerably more difficult to achieve, and you can't look at it the same way as in the last bull run or the one before that. I mean, that's exactly why I find this discussion so extremely important, because a lot of investors hear bull run, partnerships, institutional interest. That usually leads straight to $5, $10, $20, $100, or whatever else. But I mean, sometimes there are billions of additional coins between what people wish for and reality. And I mean, that's exactly why you should always look at the market capitalization first and not just blindly at the price. That is usually just the wrong approach. But now let's get to the actual price targets. I mean, in the end, what most people are interested in, of course, is where could XLM end up in the next bull run? Depending on the scenario and so on. I mean, if we calculate conservatively and assume that Stellar only reaches the market cap that we've already seen several times before, so roughly between 18 and $20 billion, then we end up at about 49 cents. And that's exactly what's crazy, because even if Stellar gets the same attention as in previous cycles, the price is significantly lower than many would expect, simply because of the higher circulating supply. And now it gets even more interesting. I mean, if Stellar were to break through the upper trend line, for example, and rise to around $25 billion in market cap, we would end up at about 67 cents, and that would already be a completely new market cap high, something we've never reached before. But it's also important to say, of course, that this doesn't mean Stellar is weak or anything like that. On the contrary, that would simply mean more capital than ever before, more users, more attention, more investors, of course, but not automatically a new all-time high in price. And that's exactly why so many investors don't really understand the difference between market cap and price. And I think with XLM, this can be shown extremely well, or you can really illustrate it with XLM. Now, however, let's move on to XRP. And that's exactly why I find XRP just a bit more interesting. Not because XRP is somehow going to shoot up to $50 or anything like that tomorrow, but because XRP has now reached a completely different phase. We're talking about tokenization, we're talking about stable coins, we're talking about fundamental institutional infrastructure, about liquidity, settlement, and brokerage. You know what Ripple has built up over the past few years? I mean, these are simply things that can generate real demand, and that's exactly where long-term value is created. But let's talk about a mistake, or rather, what did I do wrong, maybe even during a bull run? What might I have done differently? Well, I mean, the main reason was probably that I listened to other people, watched some influencers who said things like, hey, that's going to be a 50 times. Then you watch the next video. Hey, that's going to be a 100 times. Then yeah, you start calculating what could be possible, and instead of taking profits, you just wait it out, which is exactly what I did very often. And those are just fantasy targets you're waiting for, and in the end, the bear market came and most of it was simply gone again. That's why I try to approach things much more conservatively these days. I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than completely disappointed, And in my opinion, that's extremely important. That's also why you should set your own goals conservatively and not listen to every influencer, because 95% of the time it's just false claims, since nobody really knows, right? So even if I mention 3 scenarios here, that doesn't mean this is the most reputable video on the internet or that this is the standard, Of course, it could fall somewhere within that range. You know that I've always had very conservative price targets. In 2021, I had conservative price targets for BTC, and for 2024/2025, I also had conservative price targets for BTC, and it was always roughly within that range. But I never talked about 200, 300, 500, 1,000, or anything like that during this time. It was always, about 80, 90, 100, at most 150 or something like that, And that's just, still mathematically possible to some extent, Of course, sometimes it can go a bit higher than expected, but you really have to look at it very dryly and soberly, and above all, realistically. But my conclusion, I mean, today's video isn't meant to be an attack or anything against Stellar, of course, I think, and I didn't take it that way either. On the contrary. I mean, it just shows once again what every investor really needs to understand, Price alone simply means nothing. Market capitalization is 99% of the time extremely important. The circulating supply is extremely important and real demand is extremely important. So not every good coin will automatically do a 100x, not every partnership leads to an explosion, and not every bull run makes everyone rich or anything like that. And those who understand these connections will make much, much better decisions in the long run. Be sure to let me know your opinion about this in the comments. Which team are you on? Are you Team Moon prices, or are you also more on the conservative side, looking at things soberly and objectively? Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to hear. With that, that's it for this video. Of course, feel free to give a thumbs up at the end. For everyone who's new, as I said, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and I'd be happy if you also check out the Crypto Campus. Up here, you can of course also set it to euros, US dollars, Swiss francs, or whatever you like. Normally, we always state the figures in US dollars because it's just international and everyone basically speaks in dollars, but some people always ask me about euros or talk in euros. That's why you can of course also choose to display everything in euros if you like. And yes, as I said, all the links for that are in the video description. I'd appreciate it, and that's all for now. So we'll hear from each other again at the latest on Monday. Don't go too wild, keep your chin up, and see you soon. Peace, peace.